Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast. A real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest is a survivor of narcissistic abuse. The author of Empath and The Narcissist, Raven Scott's mission is to bring relatable connection and inspiration to everyone's spiritual journey, whether you're healing from a narcissist in your life or finding your spark and purpose during a difficult transition. She is passionate about empowering people to break ancestral trauma, healing childhood trauma, co-dependency, extreme religious oppression, and dispel narcissism. Her mission in producing her own show, Empath and The Narcissist, a healing guide from abuse and PTSD, is through grounded and heart-centered teachings to elevate your self-help journey. She is here to remind you, contrary to your doubts, you are a uniquely magnificent person and you are here for a purpose. Her unique approach to addressing your soul's journey with astrology, spiritual modalities, and effective exercises provides people with hope and clarity in their recovery from a narcissist. Because everyone is worthy and you deserve love and freedom, the bigger goal is to dispel the power of the narcissist in our families, partnerships, and systems, one soul at a time. Raven Scott, welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on board.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
No, it's great. I can't wait to dive into this subject. It's a little bit close to my own heart because I've sort of been in a similar situations. And I would love to stamp this out, help the people who are narcissists. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we can. Mm-hmm. So we're going to delve into that right. in this podcast. But and help the people who get entangled with these people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll go from there. I've got so many questions.
It is so very easy to get entangled. So, no shame, no blame, right? We both have.
No.
And we're amazing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the one thing I've discovered, and I've been doing this podcast now for 18 months, nearly 2 years. Mm-hmm. Let's say 18 months, not 2 years yet. And the one thing I've discovered is that anyone who's actually come across a narcissist, they're from all different walks of life, right? And also their day jobs are highly responsible, managing people. They're not and I'm not going to actually even state it's just everyone and anyone.
They have
Do you know
it
what I mean?
together. And I think that's what's so attractive.
Yes.
Is the narcissist lacks that confidence. They lack the drive. They're very much emotionally stuck in whatever state of trauma they experienced as a child. So they could emotionally be a 5-year-old in an adult body. They could emotionally be a 12-year-old in an adult body. So they search for people to support them. But they have to keep on this facade they're just as successful or actually more successful. But they really aren't. They're just little kids latching onto the leg. And so, yes, typically it is very successful, very smart, brilliant, emotionally intelligent people who just have a really big heart and see that they do have wounds and, try and help them, try and heal them and keep, letting them leach out our energy and thinking that we could fix them. So, yeah, that's the
and it's funny because going through all of the stuff that I've gone through, I'm now very much don't want you in my life with people. And it is quite funny that you go, oh, no, you're a bit broken. No, so don't even want to. Whereas maybe before I would have entertained it. Now I'm no, too broken. I don't want to take that on board. I just want to deal with my own stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting the journey you go on. So, look, let's go back to the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have your own podcast as well, right? Which is like awesome. Tell us a bit about you and your journey here, because you didn't like hit 20 and go, I know, I'm going to start this podcast and it's going to be X, Y, and Z. And, you know, like you went through a journey too. So tell us about your journey and how you got to start up a podcast, which I'm trying to think of what the podcast's name is.
It's okay, I can tell you.
It's the Empath and The Narcissist, isn't it? Or
Correct.
Empath and The Narcissist.
Empath and The Narcissist, which it wasn't called that until about a little bit over 90 days ago. By the way, I was trying to, I talked on my podcast. I started it in 2020 and I didn't really have any, like, how do you say, like, I didn't know where it was going. I just felt this intense calling to start speaking up about my spiritual ideas and journey. And so it was at first called Unlock Your Destiny. And then, which was kind of a cool name too, but it just wasn't kind of catching on SEO wise. And then, so I then switched it to the Thriving Intuitive, which also wasn't quite catching on SEO wise. And I was like, why am I not just calling my podcast the same exact name as my book, which was a whole journey I can share with you about how I wrote that, which is called Empath and The Narcissist. And when I did that, I finally was able to reach my audience and know I'm talking to the empath, and it just blew up from there.
And it's quite funny because when I say Empath and The Narcissist, I think of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
I don't know why. But I think of Beauty and the Beast.
Totally.
It's like Beauty and the Beast.
Yes, totally.
And look, the Beast turned into a lovely prince.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd get that with a narcissist, but I don't know. We'll find out.
Sometimes on the very rare occasion, which is why it's a fairy tale. Yes, but mostly not.
Yeah. So how did you get to here?
How did I get to here? Well, of course, I experienced my own emotional and sexual abuse from a narcissist when I was in my 20s. And I met him when I was very young. We were in church together. We were in a worship band. I was 17. Well, I guess I was younger than 17 when I first met him. And I was like, oh, yeah, he's kind of cute. But he was always like very aloof. And he was tall. And so I was like, he's out of my league, like whatever. So I just ignored him and I went off on like all my other little circles. And then we did like a camp over the summer, and we spent like the whole summer together with my other girlfriends, and there were other volunteers there. And I guess I was always the one that listened to him. Maybe that's what he liked about me. Like I listen to everybody. Like this is kind of my superpower, is I'm a really good listener and I can hold space for a very long time for others. But I would always end up falling asleep as he would be talking his head off and not asking me any questions. I was like, that should have been the first sign that our relationship was going to be like that.
About then.
Moving forward, he was talking, didn't ask me any questions, and I fell asleep. That was always like what came back to our, arguments and our rough patches in our relationship. And so it was really slow. We were just friends. And then all of a sudden we started hanging out together by ourselves, away from the friend group. And then one night, all of a sudden he kissed me. It was very random. It wasn't very romantic. I don't know if he felt like he needed to make a move because I was talking about like moving on to some other guy. I forget. I really don't remember all the things around it. But so then that made me feel like, I'm not out of his league, And I actually got this huge ego boost. Like, you're not nothing. Because I really felt like I was a nobody. I was ugly. I was a granola girl. I was supernatural. Like, I didn't really think I was pretty. I thought I was ugly. And so when he, who is this really tall, handsome person for his age, and then he's had these gorgeous relatives, like his mother, grandmother, everyone was like gorgeous. I just felt like, oh my gosh, I've arrived. And I feel like they do that where they like promise you stuff and they really make you feel extremely loved and elevated so that you like have a really strong like connection to them, so that when they their mask starts to slip or they start to put you down in certain subtle ways, you dismiss it. 'Cause you're like, oh, well, at the beginning, this was how it was. So you keep clinging on to that feeling they made you feel in the beginning, hoping that would return. And so, things just progressively got worse as each element of a relationship escalated into more commitment, deep diving, like moving into with each other. And then I pushed for him to get married after 8 years of being together. I was like, what are we doing? Are we going to like have a normal life. Like, I can't keep on going like this. And all the while we were struggling, you know, like I said, it was sexual abuse. So it was always like every time something would happen in bed, I would either pass out, see, like foreshadowing of our relationship, or because, you know, it was like hours and hours, and it would be like drink after drink, and it just like wouldn't finish. And I'm like, okay, I'm done. So let's like, you know, let's keep on, like, let's go to bed. I've got to work in the morning, right? Didn't consider my needs. I had to work in the morning. Really didn't. It was all about the show for him and like what he was getting out of it. Like he was making a movie almost, you know, out of the whole thing for his experience. And so when he was either disappointed or I looked bored or like super drunk or passing out, he would be disgusted. He'd be like, oh, you know, and he would just totally pull and remove his love and intimacy away from me. And sometimes it would end up in a really bad argument. We'd be yelling and I would be really hurt. And then even one time he locked me out just in my underwear on the balcony. Like it was cold and sprinkly and there was no way, like it was on this like weird like cliff hill. So there was actually no way for me to exit the balcony. It was like horribly fire unsafe, by the way. Like if there's a fire, I don't know what we would have done. But yeah, and so I had to like beg, and he just sat there with this really devious smile on his face, like enjoying me begging while I'm naked outside cold. And then I ended up, he still didn't open it. And, you know, he walked away. So I sat on the patio chairs freezing, just praying that he'll open it. It's like the way that they mentally control you with their powerful, like sadistic ways is what's abusive, right? It's just, I've just been through so many different crazy things. I kept trying and fixing myself to make it better. And it just never got better, right? It always got worse and worse.
I agree with you. Like my son was 6 months old when I thought, oh, well, I need to get help. Yeah. It's something about me maybe. Mm-hmm. And I need to get, you know, like I've just had a baby. Maybe it's, postpartum depression or whatever. And so I was like, I didn't want to harm my child. I loved my child. I thought he was awesome, right? Yeah. But I just found myself in such a depressive state because of my situation. I mean, I did everything. Everything. He would cook. I have to say, he would come home and cook, but I did everything, right? So when my child cried, I went to get him. I put him to bed. I bathed him. I did absolutely everything. And there would be days where I would be at home with my child. He would finish work, go down the pub, drink, turn, and then come home at like 7:00 at night. And then I'd be like, where have you been? Like, what's going on? Because I'm stuck in a house with a child. Yeah. And I'm like, where have you been? He'd come in and just cook, and he'd go, oh, I just, work was late. Or it's just the lies that occurred, and the drink driving and all of the various different other. Yeah. And so I went and got help because I thought, well, maybe I'm just depressed. Maybe it's me. I don't know. And thank God I did, because then through that counselling, they were like, don't you think, you know, it's 50-50? Like, you know, isn't it like, because I was going, I don't want to destroy my son's life by having him come from a broken family. And they're like, well, I don't think you are. Just take a look at yourself. But yeah, no, wow. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always it's really difficult because it is heartbreaking to break up a family, right? And that's not what you want to do. But when you're in the situation where there is domestic abuse, violence, emotional or physical, that's where it is unhealthy. Like it's more unhealthy for the child to grow up in that, more traumatizing than to be removed from that and just have two different households or one household and the other one doesn't get any custody, whatever you can do depending on
and the thing is, right, and there's been research that basically says as long as a child has one stable, secure parent that they can rely on, right, it's, you know, they grow up to, you know, be healthy individuals, hopefully. We can't guarantee that with everyone, but, you know, like, and that's my only, and in a way, starting this podcast for me was I need to break cycles of things that are in my life, as well as I need to break the cycles of things that potentially could affect him. So in a way, that's one of the reasons I sort of started this, because I needed the tools, and I know there's other single parents out there who need tools, fathers and mothers. So, yeah.
And that's why I wrote my book. And that's why when I was pregnant with my first and I found out that I was having a girl, I said, before I knew.
Wow.
And I was still going to church at the moment. Now I'm very much like, I love the spiritual realm and goddess, divine, whatever you want to call God. But I was like, okay, God, if this comes that she's a girl, if I'm having a girl, then I have a lot of work to do. Like, because this is not going to happen again. Like, the cycle stops here.
Yeah.
And then the results came, and I was like, okay, buckling down, taking all the different spiritual routes, doing all the self-improvement, reading as many books as I can, studying, became a certified meditation teacher. And that's really where the spiritual journey of healing, began. I did therapy and counseling before that, which was wonderful because it helped me label and affirm, yes, you were emotionally abused. Yes, absolutely. And have you considered, do you know what codependency is? And I was like, no, I'm not codependent. No, what are you talking about? And then she's like, just research it. She didn't even tell me that I was. And then I was like, oh, I am in every single way with every single relationship. I was codependent because as an empath, I felt like I needed to make sure everyone was good so I could be good, because I would feel all the stress and emotions and try and fix everybody. I was always trying to fix him and this, then that, and that friend in this situation. And it always ended up badly. And I didn't understand. It's like, because it's not our job to fix them. It's only our job to show them love and hold space for them and be there, but not to fix them. And I think that's the tricky part between the empath and the narcissist. At a lot of times I talk in my show, we are but one, right? We are the light and the dark within ourselves, our own soul. Our ego and our soul are struggling. And not to say that you're a narcissist at all. I think a lot of people throw that term around, but it's just there's a dark path and a light path. And some of us are struggling on that. And we're kind of being a little bit I was being arrogant, thinking that I could fix him. That was my dark shadow and staying. But then when I could just hold space and forgive him from the distance, obviously I left. I tried to move out multiple times, 7, finally did on the 8th.
Oh my God, me too.
Yeah, it's the average number, by the way. So yes, we are in that average pool.
It's just, that's very strange that you say that, because it is I was going, right, okay. I even got accepted for a rental house. So I basically went and I looked around he would be at work, and because I was at home with the baby, right? So I would go around and I would look for rental properties. And then I thought, right, I'll just drop the mic. I'll drop the bomb and go, right, I've been accepted for it. I'm moving out, because I knew he wouldn't leave. And and I went and did that, and I accepted for one. And then I was like, okay, I'm basically going to leave. And when it got to that point, I said, right, this is what I'm going to do. He was like, well, and then I backed out. And I'm like, why did I back out?
Because he promised you he would change.
I can't remember, but probably
that
was more than likely.
I always took responsibility. More than likely, yes. That, or you felt like you overreacted.
Yes.
I always felt like I overreacted in these arguments, and that I should not have moved out. Yeah. You feel so guilty that you overreacted, and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have. But it's that's just because they've pushed you so far and you're reacting in a normal way. But again, because they've groomed you and conditioned you to think that you are always kind of crazy and you are always extra sensitive and you overreact to things, and they don't ever do anything wrong, and they gaslight you about what actually happened. Then as you're processing it, you're like, well, I really do love this person, so I guess I overreacted. And then I would always reach out, apologize, and then he would be like, oh, it's okay, blah, blah, blah. If you just do this, it'll be great. It'll be fine. I'd be like, okay. And I would always take responsibility. I was always a fixer. I'm like, I can do that. But of course it didn't fix it, because he wasn't taking responsibility on his end.
Exactly.
It was never going to be fixed. It's
exactly.
a two-way street.
And I think that's what you have to accept as well, isn't it? You have to go, they are the person who needs to change themselves, right? I can't fix them. I can't change them. I can't do that with anyone, right? I can't do that with anyone. I can only do that with myself. Not even your children can you sort of, you can influence your children, but your children have they have their own personalities. They have their own wants and needs, their own, hopefully you instill your own values and behaviors on them, right? Please and thank you and all of those sort of things. But at the end of the day, they're their own little personalities, right? So they have their personality. Oh, really?
Because that's perfect, because that's really what I preach about the narcissist. You have to treat them like a little child, because they've lacked that guidance. What really is the boundaries with consequences, right? If you want to raise a strong, responsible child, you have predetermined boundaries and consequences. If you react like this, which it's unacceptable, and therefore you will have less time on your iPad or whatever the consequence is. Same thing with the narcissist. They are giant babies stuck in this emotional realm because their circumstances in life pretty much set them up to get whatever they wanted, or they were neglected. So either way, they weren't getting proper boundaries and consequences. And so as an adult...
So either side of the spectrum, basically, neglected and ignored, or
spoiled and maybe were treated like the spouse with the mother or whatever, or they were given everything because they were a special child, and the parent felt guilty for making a bad mistake and putting their child through a lot of trauma, like let's say it was a really bad divorce, And so that child learns to just, that's how it is, and that's how it always will be. I'll get my way. I'll be able to push everyone's boundaries. And really, if they don't say anything, then that is allowed. You're allowing it too. You're just like the enabling parent or the neglectful parent. Either way, for that person to grow, you have to start laying up your boundaries, which protects you as well, because they're going to drain you as much as they can because they don't have what you have.
Wow. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. So how, let's go back, right? How do they start to control you? If people were listening to this and they were like, well, I don't know if I'm in that situation or not. It sounds like I am, but like how, and also, well, I've got so many questions, but like, let's go to that. How do they start
controlling
to do the controlling? How do they start? Because you and I are intelligent, like independent, right? Intelligent, independent women who, we're not stupid. Like I was contracting, I was earning my own money, I wasn't like, I'd flown all over the world, I'd worked in different countries, I'd managed teams internationally and all of this stuff, right? So I was doing all right, thanks. So do you know what I mean? And like, you seem as though you've got it all together as well. So how do they start to come in and infect us? That's what I like. I don't know how else, but it's like infecting us like a cancer and growing all over us. And like, how does that start?
Yeah, it starts in the micro. You're right, like a cancer in the cells. It starts very micro. It's, again, like I said at the beginning, they make you feel amazing, right? They take all of your strengths and they pump up your strengths. And then and sometimes they do it unconsciously. So I don't want to make it sound very malicious. This is just like the strategy that they've learned subconsciously. Some of them do it maliciously. Some of them, it's like a subconscious. They do this with everybody. So they pump you up, and then it starts with tiny little micro controlling, like tiny little microaggressions about the way that your nails look, possibly. Like if you're so busy and your nails start to chip and you're like, I know I need to go get a manicure, whatever. Or you like red versus French. They'll start to like put little tiny seeds like, oh, your nails, like your fingers and your hands look so beautiful. To look even more amazing is if you had pink and white, or like if you had French nails or whatever. Or like for mine, it was like, pretty much just looked like my mom, but it was always these tiny little micro things. And to give you an example, I felt like I was being welcomed into the club, but he was strategically planning this event. So there was this awards night, and he's like, oh, come over, meet my mom and my grandma. So he brought me over to his mom's house. I thought, wow, this is exciting. Sat me in between them. They are literally tall, like supermodel, perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect makeup. And we're watching this award ceremony, and he's sitting on the sofa on the other side on his phone. And as I think about it, hindsight, I'm like, he planned this out. No, he did not want to really be there, but he did because he had an agenda. And the agenda was a makeover on me, the granola girl, the next day. And it was all like, I chose it, I wanted it, but I was planted into the situation to want it and to choose it because he picked at my most vulnerable insecurities.
Wow.
And they find that through having these really heart-to-heart conversations, and then they use that against you. And they start planting the seeds of, like, this is your most vulnerable weakness here. Okay, well, here's how I can fix it for you. But it's really not fixing, it's controlling you. And that's not for them to fix either, right? Like, these are your own insecurities and your own journey.
So did you, I know in hindsight is a wonderful thing, but did you, because I think back and I go, oh, red flag, should have like cut that off straight away, red flag. Did you actually see red flag? Because I saw red flags, right? And I went, oh, I don't know if I necessarily like that. Not sure I like that. Not sure I'm comfortable with that, but just got more and more involved. And then suddenly got pregnant and I'm like, oh, I'm really in this now. And I wasn't sure whether I was going to stay with this. Like, I was like, oh, I'm not sure. But we'd already had a conversation around having a child because I was getting older, and he had said, well, do you want a child and all of that, which was maybe that narcissistic conversation is, do you want a child, blah, blah, blah. And he knew I wanted a child, and that was my weakness, I suppose. And he sort of said, well, if you want a child, why don't we start trying? Because it might not work for you, right? You might need help or whatever. So what? And so, because that was the catch, wasn't it? He's now got me for until my child is 18, right? But it's like, it's just frightening. And yet all of that came back on me, where I was told that his family,
you wanted it.
Yeah. You trapped me. My family thinks you trapped me because you wanted a child and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, this is definitely a horrible dungeon that I'm sitting in, but I'm not sure I wanted to trap you into having a child, right? There's no manipulation from my part, but yeah. So did you see red flags?
He did. I was so young. I did not. I was naive in the dating realm. I did not see them. And even hindsight, I see them, yes. But thinking back, that young, I was so desperate for love and affection. And I thought, because I felt like they were a safe family from the church and all that. And they were very prestigious. So I didn't see the red flags probably until it just started to not feel fun anymore when we were living together. And it was like a chore. So it was like a chore to keep up everything, like my appearances. It was a chore to keep up being the fun girl, and bring home my paycheck to pay for all of the alcohol he wanted. You know what I mean? So it was like, that's when it started to become a chore. And that's when I started, like, I think I moved out multiple times in the last half of our relationship. So like the last 4 years, that's when it was like, no, this isn't good.
But why, if you moved out multiple times, why did you keep going back?
I felt very connected to him through the heart. I felt like I was overreacting in our arguments, and I felt like that we could resolve it every time. I felt like, oh, well, I must be the immature one because this is my first ever real relationship with a guy. So, this must be how it goes. I didn't really know any better. I didn't know that, like, when you have an argument, there should be reciprocity, and like the other person expresses how they feel and apologizes also, right? Like, so if you come into an argument, you say, this is how I felt, right? You made me feel this. I'm really upset. I'm sorry for my part. And then the other person should, and this is a red flag and signal, is do the same thing. Like, yeah, I know I felt this, and this is really what triggered me. And I'm really sorry that I did this, right? Two people are coming together. But it was never like that with him. He was always like, he would take me on a walk, and it'd be like an hour and a half conversation about how, like, literally, I don't remember the conversations because they were so ethereal.
Yeah,
and
so
like, it
many.
twisted my brain around in so many different gymnastics, like trying to figure out what I could do to fix it. And that's all he was ever trying to do. He never said, I'm responsible for this. Hey, I shouldn't make you drink so many drinks or whatever. Like, let's just like find a solution together. Never it was. It was never that. It was always like, oh, well, let me buy you a pair of high heels. Let me, buy you flowers to make sure you stay all the time. But it wasn't like he went to the store to buy them. He just like did a subscription and he forgot about it, just to keep me in it.
Wow.
So it was, that's why I kept going back, because I really felt like we could fix it. And we were just really young and immature, or he was really young and immature. So, yeah.
And also, was there addiction within all of this? Did he have an addiction at all?
Alcohol for sure.
Or was that
I can't
alcohol?
confirm about porn, but possibly, but definitely alcohol.
Well, yeah, like mine was alcohol as well. And it is funny because there is an addict cycle where, they get caught and they go, and they feel really guilty and they're never going to do it again. And they go, I'm really, really sorry. I'm going to go and get help. They go and get help. So they might go to a 12-step program, or they go to a counselor or whatever. And they do that for a couple of months. And then they start to expect, well, I've been a good boy or a good person for a few months, so I should be getting rewarded for this, right? I should be getting, but they don't actually understand that all of the trust and everything has been destroyed. And a couple of weeks or a few months of being a good person doesn't make you build all that trust back, right? It takes years, some cases, right? And so therefore, and it's also not about, I'm going to appease you. A couple of months later, you're going to, reward me. And so when they don't start getting that reward, and they're expecting to be rewarded, they then start to emotionally stack within their head. So they go, oh, she's never gonna accept me. She's never going to trust me. Oh, what's the point? Oh, it's always going to be like this, blah, blah, blah. So they're emotionally stack to be able to then abuse again, right? So they're giving themselves reasons to then use the drug of choice and it's a cycle that addicts go through, and we also get involved in and go through because we believe them, and then a few months later it all goes pear-shaped because then we catch them again, and you go through that cycle, and it's only when you can break that cycle and go, no, enough's enough, that you can actually take yourself out of that abuse as such, because it is like a roller coaster for you as the person sitting there, and you're enabling them basically as well. So
yes, and even the emotions, right? That is an addiction as well. Like I've heard from self-aware narcissists talk about this, where the chase, let's say they're cheating, like it's always like this emotional high to be able to control, to be able to win, to be able to kind of get the catch. And even if it's that one same person, right? You keep leaving, they keep catching you, it's like catch and release. Like that's just the emotional addiction of that cycle. And for, let's say, on my receiving and the empath, it's just that emotional addiction of feeling loved again, right? It's like feeling, but the love is always, was always outside of me. So therefore, I was addicted to the external love. Oh my gosh, he loves me. Like he's getting me all these flowers all the time. I feel so loved. The getting love bomb, taking me out to dinners, to vacations. And then the abuse happens. It's like, well, then you put up with the abuse and you're like, nope, this is not right. Okay, I finally see it. You leave, and then they love bomb you again. So it's like you're addicted to that cycle too. Like that is all you know. And that's not really healthy. It's not the way. And so you have to be able to break the cycle and find the love within yourself. So you're not addicted to anybody outside of yourself. You don't need any love, even in your healthy relationship. That's just a bonus. But you have to start to love yourself within yourself first.
Yes, and you have to take a step back. Like I know you've got the podcast and you help people deal with the trauma of all of this. You try and like help and coach people into getting the narcissist out of their life, out of their family, etc., etc. And I've read several books on it and things like that. But it's just having to heal yourself and take a step back and go, okay, because I've seen and I know people who just then would dive out of that relationship, go on the dating apps and just go and find somebody else, right?
Because
and
they're looking for love outside of themselves. Yeah.
But exactly. And I like sit there and I go, like, I haven't looked for and I do not want a relationship, right? Because I'm very happy with me, right? It's like, and I sort of find, and it's sort of bizarre, and it'd be interesting to see what you think, because there are times where I go, I don't want a relationship because I feel as though I'm controlled in a relationship, which is the narcissistic stuff. So I go, I don't want that. I'm more than happy to just be me. Thank you. I don't need all the hassle of the relationship. I don't see a relationship as a partnership. I see it as some way that somebody would be controlling me or just putting constraints on the life that I lead that I don't want there. So I've probably got still lots of work to do.
Yeah. It could be traced back to what you witnessed in your childhood or what you felt was the definition of love in your childhood. And so therefore you see it always as that. And then you had this relationship that then just affirmed what your belief was. And you're like, see, there it is. Everyone's controlling, right?
Yeah.
No need for love. I'm fine, perfectly myself. Yeah. Which is a really good place to be for the healing, because it's hard to heal when you've got all the other complications or someone else controlling you. But there are beautiful souls out there that don't control you, that give you all the freedom you want and support you and bring abundance of love within your life. So there's that too.
Well, this was what I was going to ask. How do you heal from a narcissistic? How do you stop that cycle? How do you stop attracting these narcissistic people, or addicted people? How do you stop it? How do you take that step back? And how do you then get into a healthy relationship? And I know there's like 3 or 4 questions there, but let's start with how do you heal yourself?
Yeah, again, it goes back to that radical self-love and self-respect. So in order for you to get the distance longer than a week or 2, you need like a couple months, because the narcissist is really good about tricking you into pulling you in, putting on the mask for a week, and then they drop it, right? So you have to give yourself at least a 3-month break. And then at that point, you're like, wow, this is wonderful. I want a longer break, and then I want a permanent break. But you have to also be strong enough to limit your contact with them, because they will do all the things necessary to gain you back, because you're the toy. They are literally upset, throwing a temper tantrum that their toy is taken away, and you're the toy. Unfortunately, you may have thought that you had a real love connection, a deep soul connection. That might have been, but that soul connection was to wake you up and say, hey, you've got healing to do, right? Yeah. And stop letting them treat you like a play toy. You are not a pawn in anyone's journey or life. You are a soul. You are here for a purpose.
And I know you talked about the fact that, it's flowers and like they love bomb you and all of that stuff. But then when they actually realize, wow, they might not be coming back, then that's when the nastiness starts. And it can go on, not for weeks, it can go on for months and years. And I'm 4 years out and I still get the abusive text messages for a run of like blooming half an hour, where I just look at the phone and I go and put it in the bedroom. Yeah. And I think, well, that phone can buzz away like it wants to. I'm not going to give any fuel to the fire, and it can just stay there. And it doesn't affect me.
That's what you have to do when you're co-parenting with them, because you can't go no contact. So you have to gray rock the whole situation and just collect it as evidence for whatever may occur down the line. So keep on sending those texts. I'm going to put it under my pillow and just keep on going with my life. Keep on
screen saving those messages. Yes. But it's right, because you just don't know. To anyone who's in a relationship separation, right, whether it's good or bad, I'm just like, you keep saving it, keep doing the screen saves and the abuse, and like some of the abusive messages I've got when I read back, and I just laugh at them now, but at the time were real triggers for me, because I would really get like, oh my God. And you'd want to reply back because it's
they know
triggering.
How to push your buttons. They know how to get you pulled into the drama. So that's your job. First step in healing is to remove yourself from the drama and do not let them push those buttons. Of course, they're going to push it, so do not reply when they do push it. So find another good coping mechanism to get your frustration out. Leave your phone there. Go for a walk or run outside. Go garden. Go paint. Go cook. Whatever you can, clean, like anything to get that excess stress out.
I bought a punch bag.
Yes, punch away.
And I bought a punch bag that was in the first couple of months. I was like, right, punch bag, attached it to my roof. And it was great, especially when it was PMT as well. I was like, PMT and a punch bag. It was brilliant. Put on some loud music, punch away.
That's very healthy.
Just awesome.
Very healthy way to channel it. Put a picture of his face on. Yeah, you're not hurting anybody. It's a punch bag. It's fun. It's exercise.
No, it's a punch bag. Exactly. But you're probably going for a walk is maybe a little bit less violent, but you know, hey.
Well, it depends on, if they're also triggering any PTSD. I always recommend walking because you have the left-right motion, which scientifically is proven to calm your nervous system, having the left, right, left, right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And that's another thing, right? So as we haven't even touched on that, but like you can suffer from PTSD regarding the whole situation and circumstance. Yes. I mean, did you suffer?
Did. Yeah, I had major PTSD attacks. I would smell something, I would hear something quite frequently when I first left. And then it got less and less, but it would still occur years later. And I would just I would not be able to breathe. I would start bawling. Sometimes I'd pull up the car off to the side of the road. I would feel my body stretching and contracting and stretching and contracting. I don't know if you've ever felt that when you have a really high fever. At least for me, I experienced that. So yeah, it was really uncomfortable. I did not like it. But so the breathing.
And it is normal,
walking,
right? It is normal to suffer PTSD.
Yeah, it is. Because
after these situations and circumstances.
Your body inside this situation with someone abusive is constantly on high alert. Your adrenals are always in fight or flight mode because you never know when they're going to wake you up in the middle of the night or they're going to pick a fight or they're going to say something. You just never know. And so they're very irrational. And so you are always and so when you're in that state of high stress, that is what then kicks in the PTSD when you're out of it. Because you're my body doesn't know what to do. I'm so used to always being in fight or flight. So when you do have that trigger, it brings your body back into it because your body holds on to it longer. Your body holds the memories and the feelings longer. And so that's why there's a lot of different ways to heal through meditation, Reiki, the EFT tapping is really great for PTSD, EMDR. I didn't do it, but I had a gal I interviewed to do the EMDR. So many beautiful different modalities to get it out of your body and to help continue to release each layer and heal.
And so how do you, so there's all of those sort of aspects that you can go and do, but do you need to then go and speak to somebody, get counselling and actually heal yourself that way?
I would always highly recommend talking to a professional therapist, yes, because they can help guide you through it and also can be just help you stay out of it too. Because even then you're oh my gosh, I'm having this panic attack. It must be because I'm not with them, right? That could be one reason that you go back. It could just be a reason where you stay away. It just depends on everyone's journey. So they're skilled and they can recommend you to different healing modalities. Mine even recommended, we did a really fun painting exercise. She was a licensed social worker. And so she saw that I was very creative. I love to paint. And so she brought in these supplies. And I got to paint all of my horrid emotions out. And then I got to paint my future, this is now how I feel, light and bright and free. And so there's all different fun little things that they can do, but highly recommend a professional therapist.
And it's really funny because that's what I do. So if I get stressed, that's what I do. I paint and I, yeah. Well, I like doing, what's the word I'm looking for? It's textural artwork and things like that. So so it's all textural. So I get stuff that you would fill cracks in walls with, and I put that onto canvas and then try and paint over it and things like that. So, yeah, and I find it, I've just got into it because I can't, but it's all abstract. I can't paint people for love nor money. Don't ask me to paint really a dog hard. Or a, yeah. I like, and these people who can, do fantastic, artwork on, portraits and things like that. I go, well, they're in a whole different league because there's no way I could do that. But, I'm more like Picasso's and I'm definitely not like Picasso, but I'm more like, drawing a person with a nose on the side of their face that's sort of a bit of a weird shape and stuff, it's like, yeah.
But it's not the product, it's the process, it's the therapy.
No, exactly. And I love it. Yeah. And I'm very tactile though. So I don't mind using brushes, but I actually prefer using my hands. Mm-hmm. So it's really about putting it on with my fingers and my hands and using different, completely weird and wonderful leaves and sticks and things like that to actually draw the lines and stuff, instead of using the more traditional paintbrushes and things. Like knives, I like to spread the paint on with a knife and stuff. It's great. Yeah. Like if anyone's out there wondering what they need to do with their lives, give a bit of painting a try. It's awesome. Yeah.
Well, it's like find a hobby, right? Because what that's doing is the self-care and the self-love. And it's really fun. I write articles for my newsletter every month about different self-care tips for each zodiac sign, because you might feel inspired to do something outside versus something inside and cozy because it's now like this zodiac season or whatever. So, yeah. So I'm a Libra then. So what tips would there be for me? Ooh, yes, the relational justice balance. Yeah, I know. So is it air sign? Is it air sign? Is it air sign? Yeah. So getting together, with friends. Calling them up, very social, but also having a balance. So I would also say like balancing your me time and your social time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Look at that. I must admit, I do like my time on my own. Yeah. There are times where I go, I just don't want to do people today. And then there's other times where I'm like, oh my God, I've got to go out. I need to just talk to somebody. So no, that's fair enough. So, okay. So how do we protect our kids though? Because you've had your daughter. I don't, have you got, is it just you and your daughter? I have two and they're both not from him. So thankfully I don't have any from him. So I was able to go completely no contact, but that did not leave me immune to his blackmailing and attacks, so. They all like to be vicious if you start talking about them, even when you don't reveal their identity. It's like, I know who you're talking about. And it's like, no one else in the world knows you or who I'm talking about. But yeah, I still do protect them. I don't post anything about my kiddos online just for that very reason. So I would also be careful, especially if you have this, be careful about what you put out online. I mean, not even if you don't have a narcissist, because there are people who take the photos of your children and then make fake accounts and then scam people with the photos of your children. And it's really scary now on the internet. But I divulge on that topic. The things that I do to make sure that they're okay is I talk to them a lot about emotions, right? So I think for all of us, raising emotional, intelligent children is the key to break the cycle. So, I'm not authoritarian. I'm very co-creating with my children, and we have conversations about things at their, intelligence level. There are, expectations, right? Boundaries and consequences, like I'd mentioned before. And so all those things, it's hard if you have to bounce your child back and forth from the household. You have to do an extra effort to just hold space for them because they're going to act up because they've literally come from a very chaotic house, right? And more than likely, it's going to be like the supply or the new boyfriend, girlfriend who's taking care of your child, not the actual, narcissist, which kind of can be comforting, but also it's not because it's just like this person. And so they're coming from this chaos. So holding space for them and develop a routine of transition so that they can feel okay. Like they're going to let stuff out with you because you're going to be the safe space where they can. So continue to hold space for them without getting anxious or absorbing the negativity. Just be able to just keep shining your love and light onto them. You know, I do the Ho'oponopono prayer with my kiddos.
Yeah, I agree because you've got to stay really there was in the beginning, there were times where my son would say something and I'd go, oh my God, well, that's not right. That's not, you know, and I would then say something, right. And I would challenge my ex-partner. And what I found was it then meant that my son would go, oh, I'm not going to tell mum that then because she's just going to react, right? And that's not going to be the best situation for me as the child because I've now got to go in 2 weekends' time back again and mum's kicked off and so dad is going to kick off at me because it's not about dad kicking off back at me as the adult. Dad will then punish the child, right? So it's the child's fault. It's that blah, 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 right? And so I had to take a step back and go, okay, I can't react and go, what the rah? But I have to sort of go, okay, thank you for telling me. I really appreciate that. And then I have to go, okay, so how did that make you feel? If I can go down that avenue, he's a boy, so feelings are like okay for him, but sometimes it's too much. And so he goes, I don't want to talk about it, Mum. And so you have to go, okay, well, we'll give him time to process and then I might get it out of him playing Lego later. And then it's around, well, okay, what could you do in this situation? And also saying, is there anything you want me to do to help you? Because there might be that he goes, no, I'm good, Mum. I'm good. And you have to respect him for that, right? And like, you know, and just say, well, look, if you do want me to do anything or you need to talk to me about anything, I'm here. Just let me know, right? When you're ready, just talk to me and sort of give him that space to deal with and process what he needs to deal with and process because it's pretty full on. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
it's a lot for them to
you've got to protect them. And so, and it is all about like for me, how I stopped the pattern was I went, okay, it's all about my child. So as much as I want to lash out and go, no, you're wrong, or that's unjust or whatever to the ex-partner, it was like, no. Is it healthy for my child to stop him seeing his dad? Well, no, it's not. So he can still see his dad, but there are boundaries set around that.
It always goes back to boundaries. And it's funny how like we can set boundaries so easily for our children, but we need to set boundaries for ourselves too. Let's say there are no children in there, or there are, like set them for them and then set them for you, you know, and be that parent for yourself. Cause you do have a little inner child in you too. And it's hurt and wounded and you're trying your best. So, you know, be that grown adult for your inner child and set those boundaries also.
Yeah, no, I agree. So look, if people want to know, your podcast is out there. They can just search it on anywhere else that people want to go for podcasts on.
Pretty much anywhere you stream
anywhere, isn't it? Apple, Spotify, everywhere now, isn't it? So the podcast is Empath and The Narcissist.
Yes.
That's the name of it. So that's cool. And then if somebody wants to find out more, get your book or whatever. I mean, your book is out everywhere as well, or is it just on?
It's on Amazon and Audible.
God, you recorded it as well. Fantastic.
Yes. So
God, I'm addicted to Audible, but yeah. And then like, have you got a website or anywhere that people can actually go to that like they can, if they want to contact you?
Find me at ravenscott.show. And you can also contact me on Instagram at ravenscottshow.
Wow. Fantastic. Look, thank you so much. It's so nice to speak for me. It's so nice to speak to somebody who's been through this, although I wish that both of us hadn't been through it.
I know.
But it's sort of part of our journey, I suppose, part of our way of going, you know, you still need to do this work on yourself. Look, thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your story with us. And it's great because I get to talk to somebody who's been through exactly the same as me. So I go, yeah, I know what you mean. It's great. Yes, I feel sane now. I don't feel I'm like the only one out there.
You are not crazy and you are not alone.
There are so many of us. So I agree. I agree. So look, one final question. If you had to recommend to my listeners a book that you've read, and it can't be your own one, so sorry, but we do recommend that anyway. What book would you recommend and why?
What's coming to my mind right now is Maiden to Mother by Sarah Durham Wilson.
Ooh.
It's also on Audible. Yeah. I literally listened to it, I think, in 2 days. Because it helped me transition, like I was talking about mothering your child within yourself, is transition from this immature, still holding grudges, still being like comparing and looking for love on the outside. Even though I had gotten over that with my love life, I also was still doing it in familial relationships. And so once I read that, I just had this amazing aha moment. I put myself through my own little Maiden to Mother ritual. I said, we're releasing all that. And I really stepped into my motherhood. And it was life-changing this last a weekend ago, where I would have been on my knees bawling and with certain things that happened with my family. And I was so at peace with it is what it is. The bar is lowered. I've transitioned. I am my mother now. I don't need them. And so, that's the one that's really helped me the most. So many amazing books that helped me in my journey, but that's the latest and the most impactful.
Oh, I agree. I mean, and Audible, and this is not a paid advert for Audible. I just love Audible. So if you're out there, guys, I could really do with some money. So this, it would be great for you to start sponsor the podcast. But hey, but Audible I find is great because as a single parent, I can be cooking dinner and I can be listening to a book, or I can listen to a book while I'm watching my son play soccer or whatever. And I can, and so I'm listening to a book while I'm watching him run around, and he still thinks I'm giving him the attention, but I'm sort of doing a double one. So it's great. So, it's multitasking. As single parents, that's what we have to do. Multitask.
You have to do.
Yeah. So Audible is great because I don't have to sit there and flick through pages and actually read words. Somebody reads it for me and I can then get on with other stuff. So, I agree. Look, Raven, thank you so much again for coming on board. It's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a fantastic rest of your day.
You too. Happy Friday.
Oh, yay. See you later. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.